Friends, my name is Rex and my co-host.
Hi, I'm Kent.
And friends, our guest today was the guitarist in the band Arsenal, and he has recently released two instrumental guitar records. His latest, Heavenly Realms, was released on February 16th. Please welcome with me Kevin Pike.
Hey, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey guys, hey, I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the episodes and the support that you give to the Christian rock community. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Kevin, growing up, was music part of your life growing up? Was anyone in your family musically inclined or play instruments, or how was that growing up with music?
Yeah, we had a classical guitar that sat around the house, and my father was an attorney. His father was a car mechanic, and that's kind of an interesting story. But my dad was very book smart, but my mom played classical piano. She was fantastic. And then it was my brother who started playing guitar, and he had rock bands, and he was 6 years older than me. So I really looked up to him. And then he would show me, he'd be like, "Hey, here's a power chord, here's a pentatonic scale," and he would teach me things. And I always wanted to be like him. So I think that's where that love came from, and listening to my dad. Interestingly enough, my dad loved rock. I mean, he loved not heavy metal necessarily, but he loved like Kiss. He loved. He's this lawyer, He loved REO Speedwagon. He took me to go see Van Halen when I was 10, and that was incredible. Styx, we would go see Styx. I remember seeing Paradise Theater when I was like 10 years old, 11, and he got us like on the 6th row, and so he always supported that. He always loved music, and he loves guitars and guitar playing and that kind of thing. So that's kind of how that love got started there.
So then what specifically led you to start playing guitar? Was it your brother was showing you those chords and whatnot, Kevin?
Yeah, I remember, I think he showed me something like he used to play a little bit of like Ain't Talking About Love or something, Van Halen. I learned that maybe like around 12 or 13. I just kind of noodled with it. I wasn't real serious about it. And then as I started thinking, wow, I really want to learn how to play. I really want to put a band together, when I was 14, 15. So I really started working on the guitar. And, I listened just at that time, like your Dokken and just anything kind of heavy metal. Then I got really interested in Yngwie Malmsteen, and I started listening to instrumental stuff. I really started loving that early on. And I realized, hey, this thing is really cool. There's this rock and roll thing, but there's also this kind of like excellence in music, this instrument. I want to learn how to play this thing. I want to be like a musician. I want to play rock, but I want to be able to really be a musician. So that's kind of where that love started. And just in high school playing in bands, we had little cover bands. Didn't really know much lead guitar. I just kind of noodling around, and we didn't have the internet back then either. So I saw like one of my friends, and it's funny because he had actually learned out of one of the guitar magazines. He had learned Autograph. It was Turn Up the Radio, and he played the solo. And I just remember thinking, I was like, I wanted to get out of there because I was like, man, this guy's so good. I don't want him to see me play. He just played this. I couldn't believe it. And I think that's when I realized I got to start working on lead guitar. So, I started really, and my family actually got worried about me because that's all I did when I was like from 15, maybe even 14 to 17 to when I left the house. That's all I did was play. I mean, the minute I got home, I was up in my room and I was just practicing all the time. So.
So you never took lessons or anything. You just immersed yourself in like all these records from that time frame and just learned how they were doing that from ear then, correct?
Well, I did. There was a local guy that was teaching guitar, and he knew how to play like he could play Randy Rhoads licks, and he taught me Crazy Train. I did take lessons from him. He was really, really good. He still is very, very good to this day. Typically with rock, you're not going to learn music reading. You're not going to learn it in a traditional sense.
Right.
which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way it is. There's a lot of ear. But over the years, and I'll talk about that, I got more into, learning about just music in general. But I did take some lessons from him. I learned how to play like the solos, and then we'd have the cover bands and play the Randy Rhoads stuff. And as that progressed on, from about the time I was 16, I had this goal. I really wanted to go to Musicians Institute, GIT, Guitar Institute of Technology.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a goal that I had set for myself. And I'm actually glad I had it, Rex, because it probably kept me out of a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in some ways, maybe it's not the healthiest thing just to be up in your room playing guitar, but I guess it's better than some of the things that I could have been doing,
Sure. Sure. Well, and maybe on a little bit more serious note, Kevin, could you possibly or tell us a little bit about your journey to faith, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was 11 years old, my dad, he was, I'm not going to say he was an atheist, maybe agnostic would be what he was. Being a lawyer, he actually studied at Oxford in England. He was, but he was a good man. He was a sweet guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's passed away now, but he accepted the Lord. It was an Assemblies of God church. He got saved. He accepted Christ, and he didn't really know how to tell the rest of the family. He didn't really know. So he was praying about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came home one night, and for some reason, we used to go to church when we were little, but for some reason, we were all sitting around. We started working on these my brother pulled out his guitar because his acoustic guitar, and we started working on these old praise songs that we used to sing. And so that's when he told us what had happened to him. And we all ended up going to church. I think we went to a Calvary Chapel. That was an Assemblies of God at the time. It ended up being Calvary Chapel, but we all went and we all accepted the Lord. The whole family got baptized. It was really it reminds me of the scripture where it says, you and your household.
Mm-hmm.
And so every single one of his kids, I'm the youngest of 5. And we all accepted the Lord. We understood the gospel, and we got baptized, and it was awesome. And then to see my dad, I mean, I knew how real this was. I mean, it was such an impact. And that was when I was 11. So, I look back as being the time that I got saved.
Mm-hmm.
And then being like 15, 16, being into guitar, just being a typical teenager, I wasn't like a sold out Christian at that time. I mean, I understood the gospel. I have no doubt I was saved, but I wanted to, I was looking to try to work on my guitar and wanted to have my girlfriends, whatever that was. But it's kind of neat how, God he'll bring you, and, he has a plan. I see that. Just this grace is amazing. So many people think they got to be good and do all these good things, and then God's going to bless them with this plan. The truth of the matter is, you really don't have much control over it. He's just going to do what he's going to do. And it's a cool thing. So
yeah,
that's when I was 11. And I had that goal to go to Musicians Institute. And I kind of made a deal with my dad. Kind of sat me down, and he's like, you want to really work on this guitar thing. And he said, I think that's great. He's like, prove to me that you're really serious about music. He goes, first of all, I was homeschooled at the time. It was like one of the first homeschools, and I kind of fell out of it. So I didn't really drop out of school, but I just kind of fell out of doing this work. And he's like, I tell you what, he's like, you go get your GED. He's like, and then enroll in college out here at the community college and take every music class you can. And let me just see, and we'll see what happens. And I did that, so I went, got my GED, rolled into college. I took every music theory. I mean, I took ridiculous stuff. I took classical guitar, of course. I took snare drum just so I could learn how to read, beats. I took piano. I just took everything I possibly could. I was terrible, really. I mean, to tell you the truth. The teachers were like, oh my gosh, here comes this guy, And I could barely read a note. I could barely do anything at the time. But it was good. I got a really good background in music. And then my mom had an uncle who lived just right outside of Los Angeles. I went and stayed with him, and I enrolled in Musicians Institute. It was in downtown Hollywood, California. And it was an intense program. You were expected to be on your instrument. The minimum they wanted you on your instrument was 12 to 16 hours a day. They wanted you playing. they said, if you're not doing that, you're not going to be, and that was at the time when guitar playing was so technical. I mean, you had, your Yngwie Malmsteens, but these were guys, when I went to Musicians Institute, Bruce Boulez and Paul Gilbert taught there from Racer X. Those guys were just all these guys that were just from, and we didn't have YouTube. That was like, we're watching these guys. We're like, wow, that's how they're doing. That's what they're doing. And we're learning the techniques and the string skipping and all this really cool stuff. But so that was quite an experience. But that was kind of when, being in that environment, there was a group of people at Musicians Institute that were Christians. And I started going to a Bible study there, which was a real kind of a haven, because it was a dark place. I mean, I would never wish anyone to have to go there. I went there for school, but it was, the school was literally right off Hollywood Boulevard. It still is there to this day. But
Well, and I think most people know your first thing is you were in the band Arsenal. Could you kind of tell us what the events or circumstances were that you joined the band?
Yeah, absolutely. What happened, and I'll just sum this up, after Musicians Institute, I came back home and became a guitar teacher at a local music store. And I started playing in bar bands. And I was in 3 different bar bands. And then I had 40 students every week. And because at that time, again, we didn't have YouTube. So like, hey, there's a GIT graduate teaching down at the music center or whatever. So I had a lot of students. And so I was doing that, and I was playing in a bar band. I had 3 different bar bands. And there was this one band I was in who's one of the guys' moms managed a band. It was just, and she wanted us to go and play high school. She wanted us to I don't know why, she wanted us to do these assembly shows. And I remember my dad came up to me and he says, you know what? He goes, my sister used to date a guy when she was in high school who was a drummer, and he worked for a company right out of high school. He came down to Florida to join this company called Young American Showcase, which is owned by Lowell Lytle. It's a Christian company, but they produce hard rock, Christian bands. We did songs that were popular, anything, Metallica, whatever. We did whatever was popular. They were endorsed by PV guitars, Converse tennis shoes. And he looked at me and says, something that would be really great, my dad said. He goes, you should use your guitar for the Lord, because you should do something. He goes, playing in these bar bands, he goes, this is kind of crappish, this is, because what is this really? You're not going to, how many bar bands can you play in? How many students can you have? I mean, really, because why don't you think about using this for the Lord? And that's really where I thought, and that really hit me. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's when God just kind of opened my eyes. He's like, yeah, I do. I need to do something. I need to use this for the Lord. I love music, but I need to do this for the Lord, because it's not worth it. These bar bands and trying to go down that road. I mean, it's just, so I went down in our house, we had an old telephone drawer. I think I just turned 20 years old. And I looked through there and I couldn't believe it, but I actually found her boyfriend's number that she used to write to him when he was on the road. And it had Young American Showcase, St. Petersburg, Florida. So I called the number on there, and the guy that answers the phone is a guy by the name of Lance Hebert. And he is the father of the famous saxophone player, Mindy Hebert. And I don't know if you've seen her or not. She toured with Aerosmith. She's incredible. She's just an incredible sax player. But we got talking. I told him, hey, I just graduated from GIT. And he told me, he goes, my daughter Mindy's going to Berkeley. And he's like, hey, you just graduated from GIT. He goes, and he asked me about my faith. And I told him, hey, I accepted the Lord. And I was honest with him. I said,
yeah,
I accepted the Lord. I believe in the Lord. I mean, I'm not playing like any Christian music or anything like that. And he's like, no, that's fine. He's like, but I really think you should audition. I think that being from GIT, you'd have a good chance. And So I went through their process and I auditioned for Young American Showcase. And I ended up, they never tell you that you're definitely in. You get invited down to Florida and you have to do a live audition so they can make sure that you are what you are and in person. So I got a seat that year. I got as a guitar player. And it was really cool. We had the endorsement from PV and they booked us. We did assembly shows and a concert at night. So we did 3 shows a day, 2 assembly shows and a concert at night. I mean, you never got any more better playing experience. And the thing about Showcase, a lot of people don't know is it's kind of it's been an underground backbone that the Lord's used for different Christian musicians. My first year that I was there, for example, our sound guy was Brad Avery of Third Day before he joined Third Day. He was our sound guy. And I can remember showing Brad licks. I'd show him, we go in the hotel and he'd be like, show me that riff, show me that Paul Gilbert riff. And so, and Troy Stone, who was in White Cross for Flyleaf, Trey Doss, I toured with Trey Doss, who was on the Defector album that he sings on Defector. Mm-hmm. There's the guy from Thresher, and I can't remember his name, but he was a Showcase guy. Some of the guys from Jars of Clay, Johnny Q. Public, one of the guys from Johnny Q. Public. So these were guys before, and so it was a really good training ground, honestly. So I was doing that. And at the time, the guitar magazines, there was 2 guitar magazines at that time, no internet. So we got all of our information from the guitar magazines, like what's going on? Where's that riff? How do you play that? Who's hot right now? What equipment is there? So we had the guitar magazines. There was 2 magazines. There was Guitar Player, mm-hmm. that was a little bit more sophisticated, that had like the jazz guys, your Larry Carltons, mm-hmm. had some rock too. But then there was Guitar for the Practicing Musician. That was the #1 magazine. That was it. And there was 2 record labels. There was Shrapnel Records, and that was Mike Varney. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that discovered, Yngwie Malmsteen, Benny Moore. He discovered his label really was the #1 label, but he had started what was called the Spotlight column in Guitar Magazine. And then John Styx, who was the guy that discovered like Blue Saraceno, he did a bunch of instrumentals with Rudy Sarzo, the guys from Night Ranger. Mm-hmm. John Styx also had a record label called Guitar Recordings. And just like the Spotlight column, Mike Varney, actually, I had a chance to talk to Mike Varney. He hated John Styx because he was like, this guy stole my idea. He kind of did. But John Styx started Guitar Recordings, and he would feature 3 guys every month from all around the world. So he would listen to you, send your tape in, and if he liked you and thought maybe you have potential to be on the label, then he would feature you in the Guitar Magazine, which was huge, because back then that was like getting a record deal,
Yeah.
So I was out on the road, and we didn't have any internet, so I was just waiting. I sent a package. I came home for Christmas break, and I recorded 3 instrumentals. You can still hear them online. I recorded 3 instrumentals, and I sent them to John Styx. And it was a couple months later. I was out on the road, came back to the hotel, and the little light was blinking, and it was my mom on there. She's like, Guitar Magazine got a hold of you, and John Styx wants to talk to you, and they want to feature you in the magazine. And so that was pretty exciting. So I got featured in, that was July 92, Guitar for the Practicing Musician. Randy Rhoads was a cover. So I got featured in the Guitar Magazine. And I was planning on working with Guitar Recordings. They had, the record label had Resume. It was called the Resume column. And they had a little compilation called Resume. And my plan was to be on the Resume Volume 2 that was going to be coming out. Little did I know how much music was going to change, and that label ended up going out of business pretty fast. But I got into the magazine, and that was actually my 2nd year in Showcase. So I was on my 2nd tour, and I put in the magazine at the very end, I put in there that I wanted to pursue a career in the Christian music field. That's what I put in there. So he talked about my playing. He compared me to the Mike Varney guys, and he gave me a really nice review about my playing. And then he wrote me a couple letters. I have some correspondence with him, some things. He's like, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you do that? We were working together. And so with that, I had come down to Florida to go back on tour again because I didn't know what else to do at that time. I was hoping to work with Guitar Recordings, but I thought, hey, it'd be great if I could be out touring the schools and that'd be a good background, really. And John Sticks liked that idea too, that I was in the schools and had the visibility. But I came down here to Florida, and we were getting ready to go on the road, and we were doing some recording. And when I went into the recording studio, I looked up on the wall, and up on the wall was hanging a picture of Arsenal, and they were up there, and I saw Christine and the rest of the band. And so I asked him, I said, "What's this band?" And the guy that was doing the recording said, he goes, "Those Arsenal, those are really good friends of mine." He goes, "They really love the Lord a lot. They're really serious about ministry." And he says, "Christine's got a stellar voice. It's a great band." So it was that night, I went back to the hotel, and someone threw me a little local magazine. I was flipping through it, and it said Arsenal auditioning guitar players to prepare for their second international release. So at this time, they had already recorded Armored Choir. So I was not the guitar player in Armored Choir. I came in, I replaced their original guitar player. And they had been on 2 compilations, Classic Metal, East Coast Metal. And then they were actually the very last band at Regency to be signed, the last one. If you look at the discography of Arsenal, they're the very, very last one. So I thought, I just got thinking about it, and I thought, man, I really don't want to go back out and do another school tour, And back then, there was a lot of guitar players, but it was really hard to find a good vocalist. That was always the hard thing and that's why I always did instrumentals. That's why I always gravitated towards instrumentals, because I wanted to do something, but I could never find, the right singer. And even in Showcase, a lot of times our singers were okay, but they weren't really, you know what I mean? They weren't what I was looking for. I was looking for like Tony Hartnell of TNT, and those kind of guys just aren't around.
Yeah.
But so I called them. I called Christine, and it was funny because they didn't want to come see me at first. The bass player, Candy, he was like, "Oh, this guy's from GIT. He's just going to be all like licks and and he's not going to be musical." And so he had to like talk. Or Christine said, "Let's just go see him. Let's just go." He's like, "Does he have a car? What do you mean? He's at a hotel. This is weird. Well, who is this guy?" She's like, "He's on a tour with the band, and let's just go meet him." So they came out and came up to the hotel room, and I had my guitar, and I went through and I played Steve Lynch's Hammerhead, a bunch of two-handed stuff. And then they asked me if I could write, and I played some riffs I was working on writing. The next day, they invited me to church. They were going to Rock Solid Sanctuary. Bob Beeman had the Rock Solid. Yeah. But he wasn't there, but it was one of his pastors. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I didn't really, out on the road, my relationship with the Lord had grown a lot because I spent a lot of time. But we were, we didn't go to church because we were constantly playing. So I thought, wow, this is really cool, community in this Christian band. And then I heard the Armored Choir, and I heard Christine's voice. And I'm like, yeah, this girl can sing. This is an opportunity that I'm looking for, because this is it. We got to have a good singer. And so they kind of looked over everything and the guitar magazine, and just in the way that I played. So I ended up moving down to Florida. I'm originally from Idaho. I don't know if I mentioned that. So I flew back to Idaho, out in the middle of nowhere. I lived on a farm, grabbed my stuff, and had a little pickup truck, and I drove it down to Florida, and I joined Arsenal. And we rehearsed 6 days a week, then we went to church on Sundays. I mean, nobody was married. And we were dead serious. But at that time, as you know, Rex, music changed, and we saw it change, that whole change. And I hate to make an excuse, but it did, right? There's no question about it. It changed. We saw when we were playing in the schools, there was one week that we were playing Metallica, Inner Sandman, and the whole crowd was going crazy. And it was the next week we were playing Smells Like Teen Spirit. And that's what they wanted to hear. It was that fast. And kids, especially teenage kids, are so smart, and they can see through anything. And I think the whole rock glam thing just became something that wasn't real to them. I can't relate to this guy that's got hair halfway down his waist and he's shredding on the guitar. I can't ever learn how to play like that. Here's a guy that looks kind of like me, wearing a flannel shirt. He's playing some chords. I know that chord. And they liked it, Right. And so I get it. I understand that. But it really changed our world, because we were like, Regency went out of business just like that. Guitar Recordings went out of business. And we were preparing for our second Regency. So we still have those songs. We have 5 recorded songs, which we are. I don't know how much I can say because I don't want to get anyone mad at me. I would like to say everything, but we are working on that, and Christine, and we are working with who you would probably think. There's only one label who Christine would even think about working with, so that's who it is.
Okay.
But we're working on it, and those songs will be added on there. Those 5 songs that we did, because we worked really hard on those, and so yeah, that was kind of where that it was really hard to pull out of that. You know, we had friends, of course. Brad Avery went on to join Third Day. That worked out great because that's where music was going. And but it was funny because he had the long hair, and he tells a story about that. He went in there, and these guys could hardly tune their guitars. He was reaching over tuning their guitars for them, and but the guy had a great voice and they had a great vibe, and that's it was very authentic. And
Sure.
I mean, Mac Powell, of course, incredible voice, right? Maybe not the most complicated songs, but it was great. So guys like him, and then Troy Stone was able to ride that wave a little bit. He joined, he got in with Scott Wenzel with White Cross, and they were able to go overseas. And when they went overseas, they were able to ride that wave for about 3 more years. Where we would warm up. We warmed up for Bride, Novella. We would do these. We were like the warm up band, and so that was cool. But that was the biggest show we'd have ever be able to do. It was like the warm up for Novella. That was a big deal. And there might be 1,000 people there. That would be the max. So it was really hard. It was interesting at that time. It was heartbreaking, really, to tell you the truth.
Kevin, I'd like to ask two questions regarding Arsenal. I remember Armored Choir, and I realize and understand that, at that time that you didn't actually play on that recording. I'd like to ask about Armored Choir. Would Christine maybe, and maybe this is a question for Christine, hopefully with you and her on an interview down the road, maybe with us. Always want to leave the door open. Regarding Arsenal, I just wonder if Christine would ever consider maybe letting that be a reissue or maybe a re-recording with your guitar work on that album. So that's kind of question number 1, because that was a classic album. I would never wish for that to be forgotten. The other question, Kevin, is you mentioned those 5 songs. Would you guys kind of stay true to form? Because I don't care what the flavor of the day is in music, but the type of, I'm just going to call it classic metal that you and Christine and Arsenal and the bands of the day, that stuff's classic. I'll just call it classic metal. I hope that if you guys, for a new album, would you guys intend on kind of staying true to form with that classic metal style?
I think we would. And I'll tell you why. That's a good question, a great question, actually. And it's funny because we were just talking about that. To answer your first question, what you said is probably what's going to happen, is going and re-recording with my guitar. Nice. And the reason for that is just, there's a lot of reasons, but there's a lot of like backstory and with the other guys' parts and, right. And we just don't want to have to mess with any of that. And of course, the other 5 songs all have me on it. So, but that would be probably the direction, I don't want to speak for her, but I know that she will tell you that she wasn't real happy with like the production of Armored Choir. It was really weak to her as far as just the sound. She wanted, the band was heavier than that. And that Russ Kirkland, who produced that, really watered it down, added keyboards, and Christine wasn't real super crazy about it. So she wants to rework some things. So that's going to take some time, but we are working on that.
Nice.
So you were asking, what was the other question?
Just, you mentioned the 5 songs, and I mean, there's no right or wrong with what I'm about to say, Kevin, but I've seen a lot of great bands. And I'm not saying Arsenal would be one of these bands that would do what I'm about to say, but I've seen a lot of great bands try to play the flavor of the day. And if you're true to yourself and who you really are and who God made you to be, that always works best. So I'm hoping you guys just maintain that great classic metal sound that you guys put out so capably and wonderfully.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ken. You're exactly right. And that's exactly, 100% exactly how I feel. Now, if I had to go back just like the heavenly realm, something like that, that's what I do. That's like, and whether, I guess, if you like it or hate it or whatever, but at least I know I'm not trying to do a flavor of the day or be popular. That's like what I love. That's my heart. And that's exactly what we would do. And those 5 songs are true to that as well. That was, they're true to that.
Nice.
So if we did any new ones, which I don't think, it'll probably be ones that have already been done, which would be in the classic vein. And then it would be those 5, those were done back, as the follow-up for Regency. And those were in that vein. They were a little bit more sophisticated in some ways, like the recordings and stuff, but it's still your classic rock. And that's what we do, Ken. So yeah, we're not going to try to do something. We're not going to try to be Alice in Chains, or we're not going to try to, I'm not going to start wearing a beanie and be Alice in Chains. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but right. I've done that before. I've done it. And it's tempting to do, but it doesn't work. And it doesn't. If anybody liked Arsenal and remembers them, and it's a niche crowd, then that's what they liked. They liked classic rock. And so we've talked about that a lot. We've tried to do that. We've tried, we had a Christine Steele project that we did we tried to do something different. It just doesn't work. And I'm glad we're not doing that. It just feels so much better just doing what we do.
So last question then on the Arsenal thing. Where are things at, Kevin, in the pipeline with regard to this new Arsenal album? Would you anticipate maybe a year down the road or sooner than a year?
I would think, well, it's been asked of us if we could do it this year. And so that's good. I always found it's good to have goals. And that's really helped me a lot too. And to be honest, I know we haven't talked about my year, but that's another thing that since that situation's happened to me, I set a lot more goals now. But I really feel that, first of all, having someone has approached us and wants to do it, to have that support is huge. It just, I don't know, it's just great. Like having you guys support, right? Having Rocks Records support something, it's so big. Could we go and make a CD and go print our own CDs? Yeah, of course we could, but there's something about having that support's huge, and the guys at Rocks, Bill Bafford, all those guys. And I almost think of Rex. I always think of him when I think of Rocks too. That's why I call him Rex, REXX sometimes. I'm always thinking Rocks.
Rex,
but, just
Rex Records.
Rex
Records instead of Rocks Records.
Yeah, why not? You could, though. Rex is awesome, though. The support, it's obvious. People see it. It means a lot. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, to answer your question, is it'd probably be sooner than probably be this year. And having people support it, asking for it, that helps to set goals. So now I can say to Christine, hey, look, let's get cracking. Let's get working on this. This is what we need to do. And I found like I had to do that. I had my goal, like Guitar Graffiti was just a demo I really just wanted to do for my guitar students originally. And Christine had the idea of working with the guys from Striper. So I kind of stole that idea, and I ended up getting a hold of Tim to do the bass parts for me. And then once I'd actually already recorded it, then I had put out on my Facebooks that I'd working doing this demo. That's all it was, just a demo. And then Bill saw that. And then Bill's like, hey, let me check that out. Let me take a listen to that. And Bill's not normally a fan of instrumental stuff. He's like, I don't normally like instrumentals. He goes, but I really love this because I've been listening to it. He goes, I really like it. He goes, I want to do this. I want to produce this. So that was really cool. So that's been exciting, that push. So I would say that we want to be able to meet those opportunities that are there. That's another thing, opportunities there seems to be more now than there was even right after I joined Arsenal. There's more people that want to hear that kind of music and hear, hey, what are you doing? I want to hear, where's a reissue? What are you doing now? And that's awesome. Praise God that there's, so just to have an opportunity, without an opportunity, you can't do anything, So the opportunity is there, and we plan to meet it,
Well, let's just talk about guitar graffiti then, Kevin. And you've kind of alluded to how that started, and you weren't really trying to do like a quote instrumental guitar album to be released. And you said that Bill heard that. How did you said you got with Tim Gaines. How did all that happen, and how was those songs done then, Kevin?
Well, what happened was it all kind of started. Interestingly enough, it actually started with meeting Steve Lynch of Autograph,
Okay.
and it's probably a little bit more history to go into. But Steve Lynch was one of the main creators of the curriculum at the guitar school that I went to, GIT. A lot of people don't know that about him. He was a GIT grad
Hmm.
himself, and he wrote a lot of the curriculum, a lot of the how we learn things, 3 note for strings. I mean, he wrote all their curriculum for me that I was going through. And he taught, like Jennifer Batten and different, she played with Michael Jackson. He was just a real influential guitarist. And my brother ended up meeting him, become friends with him. And that's how I ended up meeting him. And when he was down, he ended up coming down to this area, and I was able to hook up with him. So I actually spent 2 years studying with him, and just going back over things that, I left behind, just going over all the two-handed stuff, just learning theory, this and that. It was really Steve Lynch that said, "Hey, man, you should start. Once you start writing, write some stuff, write some." Because I told him about the instrumentals and the guitar magazine. He's like, "You should write. You should write some stuff." And even to this day, he's like a real big supporter. Of just, what I've come up with. So that got me thinking, hey, I want to do it. I'm going to do an instrumental. And I know Christine, I did steal the idea from her. She wanted to work for the guys from Arsenal, and she was friends with Kenny Lewis, who was their producer and all that stuff. So through all that, using that contact, I got a hold of him just to kind of say who I was. This is what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to get him on, some of my instrumentals that I was doing, but I didn't really have necessarily a plan for it. I wasn't planning on a release, but I wanted to do it. So I did want it to be an instrumental. To tell you the truth, Rex, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I know I just wanted to do it. I wanted to create, and I wanted to take everything that I've worked on, that I've learned from Steve Lynch, that I've learned from Paul Gilbert, Bruce Boulay. I studied privately with Bruce Boulay of Racer X, and I wanted to take all that stuff. And in fact, I'm creating for guitar players, a free PDF download I'm going to have available probably in about a month, but it's called the Heavenly Realms Field Guide. And it's not going to teach the whole song, because
Okay.
no one's going to want to sit down and learn Atomic Dragon all the way through. But it's going to have, it's going to have couple of the licks. Like, this is what I'm thinking. This is this one little idea. And then it translates all over the neck. And I'm going to give little bits and pieces, ideas. Here's a lick I learned from Bruce Boulay. You're not going to find this anywhere. It's going to be kind of like that kind of thing. But so that was my idea, was just to be creative and just get that thing. So I recorded it, and started working with Tim, and he was just really gracious. He's and I hate trying to blow my own horn. I don't like trying to be conceited at all. But he really did like the songs. He's like, man, he goes, he sent me back a really nice response that says, I really dig your guitar playing. He goes, I think you got something real special. He's like, I'm glad to be on board, with whatever you want to do. So that was really cool. We became good friends through that. And he started, he's going through seminary, and he was going to be a pastor. I think he still is. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't talked to him as much in the last month and a half, since, things are done now. But
Yeah.
So anyways, that's where that idea came from. And then right in the middle of it, I was telling you guys earlier before we started, I lost my hearing in my right ear. I had a sudden hearing loss syndrome, they call it, which is bizarre. And there may be people out there that have this. So if you're out there and you're a musician, don't lose heart and don't give up. Don't get depressed, because it's easy to. It's interesting because my hearing went out of my ear, and I had to relearn a lot of things, like how I listen to music. There's a book by a musician called A Train in the Night. A Train in the Night. I can't remember the author, but it's called A Train in the Night. And he talks about, he'd lost his hearing in one ear. And just, I read that book and just kind of learned how to re-listen to things. And surprisingly, I found it was really hard at first. I do play in a worship group, and I like to tell musicians that, because it's so easy these days just to play in your room. And even if you were in a band back in the day, you still kind of end up on your recording equipment, and it's so easy to get caught up in all that. But I always encourage people, get involved, play a couple times a month in your worship group, man. Get out and share your music as much as you can. If it's playing for one person. But anyways, I had to kind of relearn. And that was right in the middle of guitar graffiti. So that was really, that was a bit of a struggle. So Tim helped me a lot with that too, because able to say, yeah, this sounds good. That doesn't, let's do this. I mean, we're in their day and age too, where everyone's using all this different equipment, I sometimes wonder what like Rob Caldwell thinks of all of our stuff when it comes to him. He does the final mastering. I mean, I'm sure he probably pulls his hair out because not everybody's a studio engineer. We do what we can, right? That's just the way it is now. But we're working with all this different equipment. So I had to really just to learn, but I felt like it helped resharpen my senses. I feel like when I play with a band, or even if I'm just like recording, I turn my head sideways. I learned that from Paul Stanley because he's also deaf in one ear, and just kind of learn how to reposition myself, and how to listen. So I feel like it sharpened the skills. It's weird. I feel like I hear the bass better. I listen more. I'm not just about me and hey, here's my guitar riff, and I'm like actually listen. Okay, am I grooving right here? Does that have am I in the groove? Am I is my lick? I feel like it just really sharpened my senses up. So I don't know if that answers your question, but working with Tim, it really helped through that. So the guitar graffiti came about. I finished it, and I was just going to release it like on. I think that's all kind of new to me to come back because so many things have changed. I'm like, what do people do now? Like Larry Woolley. I think I watched. It might have been on you guys. You guys interviewed Larry Woolley.
Yeah.
And I watched that interview, Rex. I did way back when, and I remember him saying that there's the new way. He was talking about I had to come back and. What do you do now? Oh, geez, you got all this digital. You can do so much. You can get, as long as you're recording in digital, and the guy that's across the country is recording in digital, you can put it together and come up with something halfway decent.
Sure.
And so I was just learning all that, and so I got guitar graffiti done, and that's when I had posted on there like, hey, to my students, if you want to download a guitar graffiti, let me know. And it's got Timothy Gaines on it. That was it. And then Bill sent me a message. And I was familiar with Rock's records, but Bill, he sent me a message, said, hey, Kevin, he's like, I'd be really interested, let me check that out. So I sent it to him, and then he just sent back a thing and said, hey, I don't normally like guitar instrumentals. He goes, not that I have anything against them. He does some once in a while, Pastor Brad, and there was another project, L&M, or he goes, I like him. He goes, but I like this. He goes, I really like this. He goes, I feel like it's got something. So he offered, to license it and to do that. And then that was only an EP. And then there were some things left over, and I just kept on working with them. I'm like, I think I'd actually like this better. And I got a little bit better with the recording equipment and getting Rob Caldwell's help. And we actually did use one of the songs from Guitar Graffiti is on Heavenly Realms, Ode to the King. But I just feel like it was overall mixed a little bit better and sounded a little bit more professional and that kind of thing. But that's how that all came about. So I wasn't planning on it being a Rock's record. I really didn't think Bill would even want to release an instrumental, honestly, because it's been a long time since guys like Jeff Sheets and Kristen Pillitary, Joey Tofola, which I loved all those guys. But there hasn't been a release like that in a lot of years. And that's what I wanted Heavenly Realms. I wanted it to be for the Christian community. I wanted it to be another kind of release like that. I wanted it to be kind of like a Jeff Sheets release of today,
Well, I will say, Kevin, yeah, if people our age, if you're into like Vinnie Moore, Tony McAlpin, Joe Satriani, Yangi Malmsteen, and like you've mentioned, Joey Tafala, you will love both of Kevin's records. I highly recommend people getting both of those. You will not be disappointed. And I was glad to see that Heavenly Realms was a full album or whatever. That was the only thing I was disappointed about with Guitar Graffiti. There's only 5 songs. I was like, I want more because it's it was so good in that, Kevin. the artwork on, we're gonna, I guess, go to Heavenly Realms here, Kevin. The artwork was done by Rafael Tavares, I think. Did you give him ideas of what you were looking for the artwork on this, Kevin, or how much did he have to do with the artwork, with everything on this?
That's a good question. I love that artwork, and I love him. He's so cool.
Mhm.
And his artwork, I'm not cutting down anyone that uses AI because I don't want to do that, because I can't draw, I can't create art. I mean, I did guitar graffiti, but look at the cover of guitar graffiti. What I'm saying is, but with Raphael, he doesn't use AI. I mean, he is, yeah. And I got some of the pics, and those are,
Yeah.
if you order guitar graffiti, or not guitar graffiti, I'm sorry, if you order Heavenly Realms now, there is all the pics that were signed by Tim and myself are gone, but you can get now, there's like I'm not well you can see that, but there's a sticker, a vinyl sticker, and then there's 2 guitar picks that you get with it. And then I'm also going to offer, I'm going to have the Heavenly Realms field guide that'll be, all the licks and stuff, or if guitar players want that. But yeah, Raphael, it's funny, I'll tell you what I sent him is I sent him a bunch of Shrapnel record covers.
Oh, okay.
I did. And I said there was one in particular that I wanted, because what I wanted to do with Heavenly Realms, and I really tried to, I'll just say to people that are watching, we tried to get my guitar to come through. It does not come through Zoom. You can't even hear it. So that's why I'm not even going to try, because it just doesn't, it's not working. But otherwise I would show you some of the licks I'm talking about. But what really inspired me with Heavenly Realms is I wanted to take, Shrapnel had a record right before things changed, and it was called Ominous Guitarist of the Unknown by Shrapnel. And it had some guys, I actually knew a couple of those guys. One of them, Todd Dune, he was at GIT when I was there. Fantastic guitar player. Darren Householder, incredible. Todd actually became a huge born-again Christian, by the way, but that's another story. But that cover for that album, I really liked it. It had these robots, and they were all on this planet, and they had them kind of spread out. And that's what I sent Raphael that. I said, look, I want robots on here, but I want the robots to be us. I want you to do like a robot of Tim. I want it to look like him. And then I want, I probably wouldn't have made me so big. I wanted everyone to actually, to tell you the truth, I wanted everyone to be closer. And I had plans, some different plans. One of the guys from Holy Soldier, that it's a long story, but he was a showcase guy. I was going to get some different people on it, and I was going to have, there was going to be more robots, and they were all going to hold their guitars. I was hoping to get Steve Lynch. I wanted, to have his black guitar. I'm endorsed by Robert's Guitars. This is their Steve Lynch model, which Ken pointed out. I thought that was really cool that Ken recognized this. Thank you for that, Ken.
Autograph.
Because that's hard. Most people would never, ever put that together. But Steve Lynch, great, big shout out to him. But he designed this guitar. It's a neck through body. It's a gorgeous guitar. It's a real shred machine. And but anyways, my idea was to have all these different guitar players on the cover holding their guitars. My guy would have this one. Tim's having his bass guitar, and that was kind of the concept. So Raphael just went with that, and I waited, and man, he's got a lot of people. He does work for not just Christian bands, but he also works for like Laurie Basilio, Ibanez and Dorsey, incredible. He works for a lot of bands. So I had to wait a long time, but man, when I was like, yes, that's perfect. So I was excited about it, and I hope people enjoy that artwork. But he did that whole spread, where it goes to the back cover, and he's just a neat guy. I mean, he loves the Lord so much, that guy. He really does.
He would do the whole.
Yeah, so he does the whole spread right there. Yeah, which I thought was really cool. And just for the record, I'm not one of those Christians that believes in aliens. So if anyone's thinking that, that's not. I just always like sci-fi, and I love art that kind of gets that part of the brain going. I love C.S. Lewis. I love his space trilogies. I love all those fantasy novels kind of stuff, Tolkien, and I love all the sci-fi stuff. So that just always worked to me, and I wanted to do some modern day stuff. I have a lot of things on like Heavenly Realms, and I know it's kind of hard because you don't see a video, but there's a lot of two-handed stuff, a lot of things where I kind of left off, a lot of harmonically different kind of things that almost sound like they're two guitars, but There's no effects as far as like harmonies. Everything's done a third up, so everything's played live. So if you hear like two guitars like always playing a harmony, I'm not hitting a button and hitting a harmonizer. I'm actually going back and playing that riff in harmony with the other one over another track, so everything ties together. So there's a lot of work there. It's not. So the only kind of time where there's really like any kind of a lot of effects is maybe like with a vocalizer where you got. But everything's recorded live, and I don't know if I've gone too far not answering that question, but yeah, I gave him a lot of Shrapnel records, and I said I wanted a really nice back sky. I wanted a really nice back sky because I love that on Shrapnel records, like Street Legal. I really wanted a nice background, and I wanted something that would kind of move people and want them to listen to it. And I just had like a little round sticker that I had put on mine that said featuring Timothy Gaines, and then he said, no, he goes, that's not good enough because let's put this sign. So I thought, how cool is that? Like, why is this sign on this planet? I don't know, but it's cool. It's like this old bent up sign that says. So I loved what he did, and I think it really speaks to the album and kind of what I was trying to do, which was to be more futuristic and to try to kind of pick up on that, where that ominous guitars of the unknown. So I tried to do a lot of wide interval stuff, a lot of things that were pushing myself really with things that I always wanted to do. Licks that I always wanted to be able to pull off. So I really did push myself in a lot of ways, but also wanted to have some melodies that people could relate to. And of course, the heavenly realms, like I said, I'm not a Christian that's into like the aliens. I just, the heavenly realms to me is like when we're with Christ, the heavenly realms, who knows what it's going to look like. It's probably going to look cooler than that, actually, tell you the truth. It's not going to look, it's going to look pretty amazing. I bet that's, read Ecclesiastics, it sounds pretty amazing to me. But anyways, it's just to have that kind of that futuristic. And I wanted to have that set with the stars. My dad always showed me the constellations when I was growing up. And my favorite constellation was the Orion constellation. And I always look up to it to this day. And I always think about the armor of God every time I see the Orion. And I always think to myself, the armor of God, I got to be, reading, I need to be praying, I need to be fellowshipping, I need to be doing those three things and putting on that armor on a daily basis. And that reminds me, and that's why I wrote the song Orion on there. That was kind of, I didn't get to put it in the notes, but that really is to my dad, that particular song.
Kent, you had a question or comment?
Sure. So Kevin, my mom was an art teacher, and she's with the Lord now, but she taught art and was an artist. And I see you as a musician, and I look at Rafael Taveras' art, and I think he also did Bride's last album too. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I think
no, you're right. Yeah.
So
he did Echo Chamber
for Deny the Fallen.
Yeah, for Deny the Fallen. He did After Winter. He's done so many.
The point being, it's what you said about your cover. We're humankind created in the image of the Almighty. God wouldn't have given us an imagination, or the ability. I see all these beautiful and wonderful paintings, such as Heavenly Realms for your album cover that Raphael did. I've heard you're a maestro with the guitar, and I hear that you're a great artist. And isn't it amazing how, I don't know exactly how many notes there are, but I know that there are endless ways to play them, and there are endless styles of music, and it's all a blessing. Every form of art, whether music or visual, it's all something given to us as a gift from the Creator. And I just marvel at that. And I just wanted to say that because what you said, Kevin, regarding the wonderful cover and, your abilities and stuff, I just marvel at the hand of the Creator. And I appreciate you as an artist, giving the Creator the praise for what he has given to us as a gift. I thank you for that.
Well, Ken, I appreciate that. I appreciate so much what you just said right there. This kind of blows my mind because that's exactly.
Cheers.
I was talking with Bill. I said the exact same thing. I said, everyone's seen so many different musicians. I said somehow, and I don't know how, but I guess my hope was that something like Heavenly Realms would inspire people to create their art, to be creative, to say, hey, look at this and say, this is cool. This guy created this. I can create something too. I mean, your art is important too, whether maybe it's not music, but maybe it's doing things. Maybe it's reviewing things, the podcast, or maybe it's art, maybe it's digital, maybe it's whatever it may be. But to be able to use that to the glory of God it's so awesome to be able to do. And I wanted to be able to somehow encourage people to do that. I didn't want to just say, look at me and, look, wow, look at this, I can shred or whatever. I wanted it to be, hey, check out this artwork that Raphael did. And I worked with Tim, and then Bill Bafford did this, and Rob Caldwell mixed it, and Arnaud did this with the drums, and then we all created something and brought it together. And maybe that can inspire you. You can be creative too. Why can't you be? And it's not just one person like, oh, here's all my riffs, but it's people coming together. And so, anyways, I wanted it to be inspiring for people to bring glory to God with whatever art it is that they do. And to be able to say, you know what, I can do that too. And, why can't I want to play music, but there's no opportunity. Well, play for your worship group, if you can.
Mm-hmm.
If you get an album, put it together and send the tape to Bill, send a tape to you guys. There's things you can do, but be creative and don't be afraid to be creative. So I wanted it to be inspiring that way. I don't know if I'm wording that right, but you really nailed that, because that's exactly what I was hoping for. That's really what I wanted. And I wanted that to shine through. Like, I didn't want it to look like, oh, this robot's supposed to be me and the plane's all about me. I wanted to be able to say, even though there's no vocals on it, so I can't really preach the word of Christ, I just wanted to show people that I want to serve the Lord. I want, whatever I do, I want to do for the glory of God. And if you can do that too, you can write, if you write poetry or whatever it is that you do, you can do it to the glory of God. It's rewarding. So.
Well, and Kevin, on both of your CDs, there are electric and acoustic instrumentals. One of my question is, do you have a preference on electric or acoustic guitar? Which one would you rather play or do something with?
Well, I'm definitely consider myself an electric guitar player. It's two different worlds. You'll never see me really on an acoustic, just a regular 6-string acoustic. All the acoustic stuff that's on Heavenly Realms is done with the nylon string classical, and that's a different animal too. That's a totally different animal. That's a whole different ball game. But it's interesting because it relates a lot more to the guitar, because I do a lot of single note runs, where I'm playing through scales and that kind of thing, and that really tailors well to the nylon string. So when I have something, I can use those same kind of riffs, but I can do them on the nylon string. And it just lends itself to a nice sound, a different kind of sound. So I really consider myself an electric guitar player who loves classical. It was because of Yngwie Malmsteen that I got interested in the nylon string. And I never knew there was a difference when I was little. But then I realized, hey, the classical guitar is its own thing. It's different than acoustic. It's different than electric.
Yeah.
And I had a nylon string guitar hand built by a luthier that I've wanted one of his guitars for years, and he's here local. And him and his daughter built, and they built me a really beautiful nylon string classical, and that's what I'm playing on that.
Cool. There's another track from Heavenly Realms called GPS. It says Gaines Pike Station. Can you tell me what the meaning of that is? I've been curious ever since I've seen the record and played the music.
Well, that was what I wanted to have with that. I wish you could hear the guitar.
Oh, you
can
can hear that
loud and clear.
Yeah, that just
you could hear that.
Yeah,
it's not going to be as distorted, but the idea with GPS, I wanted to kind of bring in this kind of almost, it's a fusion idea, but still keep it rock. And it was this idea to do these like Um, this kind of thing. And that song, GPS, I was trying to think of something. I'm trying to keep things like kind of space related,
Mm-hmm.
The GPS is my favorite one. It's kind of interesting you bring that up. I like that one because that was the last one that I did. And I feel like it's got a little bit of everything that I've been trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the string skipping, which is this real wide. I don't have a lot of distortion because can you hear that?
We heard
Some
what it's
of it.
letting us do, Kevin. It's letting us hear certain frequencies, but the higher on the notes that you go, it won't pick those up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so the idea anyway, see if you can't really hear it, you can hear it on GPS, but I like that song a lot because it just has a lot of these, it's got a lot of almost fusion ideas where you're playing outside the scale, like where you have like this idea where you're like, or this kind of like outside kind of bluesy, real almost country almost. So anyways, but the song Gaines Pike Station, honestly, Rex, I was just trying to think of something. I like the idea of GPS. I wanted to maybe work with Christine, with Tim, and I was thinking about calling it Gaines, Pike, and Steele.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that idea. I thought it was space age because I want to keep with the heavenly realms. And I thought, well, on the cover, we're floating on that station. It's like a station.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, Gaines Pike Station. So here we are. Mm-hmm. Honestly, this is how it goes. Okay, I'll just lay this out real quick. This is what it is. Atomic Dragon is the spaceship that's up in the corner. That's the Atomic Dragon. It was actually supposed to say Atomic Dragon on it, like the USS Enterprise, okay? But we didn't get that on there. But the Atomic Dragon is the ship.
Okay. So
the ship comes, first song, Atomic Dragon, comes to this heavenly realms. The ship comes and it discovers, hey, this is the heavenly realms. So this is the discovery. Then after heavenly realms is the landing. They see the planet, they come in, and then they land. So that's the landing, kind of like this. And it's got a lot of these Paul Gilbert kind of shreddy stuff here. All these different lines going on and shreddy stuff. And then after they've landed, the landing, then they realize it's a future world. Okay, this is the future world. So then the future world starts with a classical guitar piece. The classical guitar pieces are based on a guitar player from the 1800s. His name is Francisco Tárrega. And the classical pieces on there are original, but I have to give him credit because I do take a lot of his backdrops. There was a song called La Regma by Francisco Tárrega, written in 1860. That is basically what's playing in the background. Then I'm soloing over the top, doing those like really fast runs, But I'm doing that over his La Regma, honestly. So then it goes into Future World. And I wanted that song covers like guitar from the 1800s. This is the idea of Future World. It starts with the classical guitar, 1800s. It works its way through. It has some riffs that are kind of almost like Hendrix, Van Halen. And then at the very end, it has this two-handed thing where it's just this crazy, two-handed thing that's going. And it's at the very end of it's got this really weird, kind of bizarre, almost altered sounding, most futuristic thing I could think of. So that was the idea of Future World. And then coming out of Future World was a song called Beyond the Valley. So then the guys land, Future World, they go explore, they go beyond the valley. It was originally going to be called Beyond Purple Valley because of the cover, but they go beyond the valley. They discover the king, which is Christ, of course. So they give praise to the king, ode to the king. And then they have to get back. So they use their GPS. And then once they get their GPS, they also use their GPS and Orion as their guide. And then they get back for the journey home. And that's the idea.
Cool. Well, and as we kind of wind down here, Kevin, if I can ask, are you working on a third instrumental album yet?
Rex and Ken, probably, honestly, I think I'm not planning on it at this time. I feel like I really wanted to do that. And I feel like, to me, that was everything that I wanted to do. I wanted to have a really great bass player. I got Tim. I wanted it to be on an actual record label. So we got Rocks. I wanted a really super cool cover, and we got that. I mean, the only thing I could think of, it'd be great to go into like a gigantic, beautiful studio and have like, have a better recording. But I think that kind of is about it for me as far as that goes. For now, I'm thinking I want to concentrate on Arsenal now.
Okay.
And I want to give Christine, I really feel like, she's got such a great voice. And I feel like God's brought us together, years ago for that purpose. And I want to see her get a chance, because I wanted people to get a chance to hear her voice. I wanted to be able to be used to God's glory. And I feel like I could do that best right now, just really focusing on that Arsenal. So I want to take everything that I've learned, which is just being really disciplined. I mean, because like Heavenly Realms, I mean, there were times I have a guitar in my car, an electric guitar that I keep tucked down. And of course, so when I'm at work, I go out on my lunch break, and I mean, I wrote most of that stuff just on sitting there, just going, okay, let me hear that. I mean, here's my drum track from Arnaud. Let's listen. Let's write this riff. And I just realized that you got to make time to do stuff. So that's what we got to do with Arsenal, just to buckle down. So I want to take all that drive that I had to bring this to completion and use it for Arsenal,
Okay, cool. So where can people connect with you online, and where can they purchase your 2 CDs at, Kevin? We want to kind of make sure fans know where to go to get those 2 great records.
I appreciate that, Rex, and I hope that, I know that we're not necessarily in the age of people buying physical media, but people are seeming to like it a lot more. And I know I miss it. It. And it's been really just fun to have like Heavenly Realms and have the artwork and listen to the songs and look at the artwork. It does something to our imaginations.
Yeah.
I think it's important. They can go to Rocks Records, not Rex Records, Rocks, ROXX Records.com. And there's a lot of great bands on there. Let me say that, and there's stuff on there that if you like, I know guitar instrumental isn't necessarily everyone's go-to. I hope that you can find some inspiration in it. And, it supports Tim too. If you're a fan of Tim, if you buy anything like we have on Anchor merchandising, you have the shirts that have the artwork. Tim gets a percentage of that.
Okay.
I did have to work with Tim, got permission to use his, Tim does not like it when people put out his stuff without his permission.
Oh,
and so just so people know, if you're a fan of Tim's, everything on Heavenly Realms is done with his permission. Working with him, his image on the cover, on the shirts, he gets a percentage of any shirt that sells.
Cool.
And in fact, I'm taking myself off that. I'm just anything he makes on that, if a shirt sells, it all goes to Tim and to Anthony of Anchor Merchandising. I don't even want to. I want those guys, to help Tim out as much as I can. So Rocks Records, and they got Heavenly Realms, which is the newest one. Guitar Graffiti, which was the first one, which is an EP.
Yep.
And it's not as expensive either. It's only like $7.77. But it's got some. It's just kind of cool. I mean, it's got some cool stuff. I think Heavenly Realms is produced a little bit better, but they're both cool. And then there's also we got one of the songs on Preachers of the Underground Volume 2. Future World's on there.
Okay.
It's not the mix that is on here. The mix for Future World is better on the Heavenly Realms. But you know what? We don't have to go behind the scenes. It's okay. And this is a cool album. So those 3 are available on there. And hopefully some Arsenal stuff will be available soon too.
Ken, did you have any other questions or anything before we kind of really wind things down here?
I just want to thank you for coming on, Kevin, and being our guest, and blessings to you, and congratulations on 30 years of marriage with Christine, because that's an inspiration too, for everybody out there. So congrats to you both. And I'm super pumped to hear about future Arsenal stuff coming. I think that's awesome.
I appreciate that, Ken. I really appreciate, the things that you asked me and things you said are so many things that just right on of what we want to do, stay true to the original. Sound, I mean, as far as being classic rock, of course, it'll have our own sound, but it won't be like we're trying to be something that we're not. It's going to be what we are, which is, rockers at heart, so.
Just doing what you do best, and that's awesome.
Exactly. So I appreciate you, Ken. Thank you so much.
And Kevin, what would you like to say, or to all of your friends and fans, or words of wisdom? What would you like to say to everyone that you would like to share with them right now?
I would say, whatever you do, do it for God, do it for His glory, and you're going to enjoy it a lot more. As you're going through life, just commit yourself to the Lord, commit your ways to the Lord. If you're a musician, I would say, if you can, get involved in your worship group. Try to play your instrument for somebody, even if it's your family. Doesn't matter. Go out and play it for somebody live. So it's not on the internet. That's okay too. But go out, actually sit someone down and say, hey, I wrote this today. Check this out, or play a piece for them live, because we're missing that these days. Share. Be willing to share. Don't be afraid to share. I grew up, I was very insecure growing up. Always nervous to go out and play. Always just scared to death. And the first time I ever had to play a classical guitar recital, I was shaking in my boots, and that's normal. We're all like that. But, be willing to share anyways, even if you feel a little intimidated, do it anyways. Do it afraid, Elizabeth Elliot, the great missionary, she always said, whether or not you're scared, if you're afraid, then do it afraid, but do it. If you go out there and you're shaking in your boots, it's okay. It's better to be like that than not do it at all. Don't be afraid and share,
Well, thank you, Kevin.
That's what I'd say.
Thank you so much. And we always close out our episodes with something we call Message from Home. And it's just a scripture verse that I select. And I'm just going to take your scripture verse from the Heavenly Realm CD that you have on there, Kevin, because I think it's just a perfect fit. And that is from the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 6. And it says, and God raises us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus. And I think sometimes we just get bogged down with everything in the world and what's going on. And we need to remember that, Jesus is with God, and they're just right there trying to help us be the best that we can be. And just remember that there's a reward waiting for us in the future. So I just want to thank you, Kevin, for your time, and please, everyone, go get these records. You will not be disappointed if you're into that instrumental guitar stuff. They're very awesome. So we're gonna say goodbye, but Kevin, if you just could hang loose with us for 1 minute, we're gonna say goodbye to all of our friends out.
All right, great. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Rex froze up. On that note, Kevin, thank you so much. Friends out there, whenever you just download and you don't make a physical purchase, you never get that brand new CD smell that smells so good when you crack one open.
That's right.